Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Hesse Bros pod. Maybe not the most excited I've ever been for a Hesse Bros pod, but we're going to deliver a great one for you. Myself, Brent Hesse, and joining me, my brother Luke. Luke, well, we've got the NFL season in the books, man. It feels like just a couple weeks ago we were making our preseason picks, watching week 1 games, and now we've got a Super Bowl champion. It is none other than the Philadelphia Eagles. Wow, what are your thoughts?
Well, that was definitely an interesting game, and really, I think what I want to hear and what everyone wants to hear is, what are your thoughts, B. Hess? I know that had to have been tough to watch, but can you kind of take me through, what your experience was like over that Super Bowl, and when did you kind of feel it slipping away? At some point, everyone kind of thought Mahomes would be able to bring something back there. Obviously, had one of his worst games ever, but at what point did you kind of feel it completely slipping away?
Yeah, I mean, I was fired up downtown Kansas City with some of my great friends cheering on the Chiefs. Everybody fired up for the kingdom. And, you know, right away, the Chiefs offense just didn't have that thing clicking. They were not getting able to get any first downs. Nothing was easy. Eagles have a good first drive. They get the ball down the field. Tush push goes in. You're like, okay, whatever. It's 10-0, right? It's like, okay, well, unfortunately, this is just the fifth straight time Patrick Mahomes has been in a Super Bowl and they go down 10 points. It's happened every single game. I was like, please, let's not have it. It's already happened 4 times and he's come back to win 3 out of those 4. So, like, let's not do it a fifth time. But it happened. Whatever. Then you have the really bad pick six, Cooper DeJean, and that one's tough. That one's like, okay, now it's like, okay, we got to get it to 10 by halftime. We saw what happened last time. It was a 10-point game at halftime with the Philadelphia Eagles and the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Mahomes made no worries in the second half, and it never came. The obviously the play that still feels the most frustrating is the one where DeAndre Hopkins is wide open on the right side of the field. Mahomes rolls out there, and just for some reason they're not connecting. Hopkins looks like he stumbles. It seemed like a pretty good throw from Mahomes, one in which Hopkins should have caught. You want to hit him in stride, he might take it to the house. If not, he gets down close and the Chiefs score before half. And then you're like, okay, well, they're back in the game. Instead, now it's 24-0. And at 24-0, it's like, okay, it's happened before. We've seen a little slightly bigger comeback in Super Bowl history. But at that point, you're just kind of hoping for anything. And then when the first drive comes out and it's a quick 3 and out, then it's like, yep, this one is just not meant to be today. And you got to give a lot of credit to the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, you called it, Luke. You picked the Eagles last week, so I'll let you gloat for a little bit. You were right. I mean, outside of quarterback and hell, even in that matchup, Jalen Hurts was a better quarterback for those 60 minutes. The Eagles were better across the board.
Yep, and it ended up coming down to basically the way I thought it would. Jalen Carter. I mean, if you could pick one player or one unit to be the MVP, it was 100% that Eagles defensive line. The way they were getting pressure on Mahomes and absolutely destroying the Chiefs O line, completely just took Mahomes out of the game and the entire Chiefs offense for that matter. I think the biggest takeaways is, dang, it would have been nice for the Chiefs to have a receiver like Rashi Rice in that game, be able to get the ball out quick to somebody you know is reliable and can get those yards after the catch and move the sticks a few times. That definitely would have helped out a lot. And they're gonna hopefully have him back next year if the suspension doesn't end up happening with his reckless driving incident and all that. And I feel like that could have been at least something to give the Chiefs some momentum if they had a player like that that could move the sticks. It just didn't happen early for the Chiefs, and Mahomes got rattled by that defensive line. I feel like, yeah, I mean, Hurts didn't even really have a great game. Whenever in the second quarter, the Chiefs went from being down 10 to that pick six, like you said, and then the next pick that just gives the Eagles the short field. It's like Hurts didn't really even have to do much. It all came down to what that defensive line was doing, and the Eagles secondary stepped up over those receivers. And then, like you said, at that point, the game was basically over, and you just got to hand it to the Eagles. I mean, this team went on an absolutely insane run. if it weren't for the Lions having an all-time year as well, the Eagles easily would have been the Super Bowl favorites probably the entire time with how stacked that AFC battle was. And I mean, the Eagles had absolutely weapons on every aspect of the ball, and they will for at least next year. So it's going to be hard to dethrone them. It's definitely what the Lions are going to have to try to do next year, as we're already looking ahead to that.
Yeah, I hate to give you too much credit, Luke, but you were spot on with the defensive line. That was the biggest factor in the game. Kansas City could not protect Mahomes. They got through with four. They didn't blitz it one time the entire game. Sacked Mahomes six times. He was under pressure, half his dropbacks. And the Chiefs never adjusted. They never went to a quick passing game like I thought they could have. Obviously Rashid, that's a great point. That's something that he does great is those underneath intermediate routes over the middle. Something that Kelsey used to do great. Now in that game, Kelsey obviously struggled. He was not on the same page with Mahomes a couple times, and then they asked him to do more blocking, chip him, just try to slow down that pass rush, and that didn't really work either. So there was no outlet, no safety valve for Mahomes throughout the game, and the Chiefs just didn't. They just didn't get done. You're right. The defense. I thought the defense for Kansas City played well in certain aspects. They had the big interception early with Brian Cook. Looked like they tried to pull some momentum back there. But that was really the only big play the Chiefs were able to make to capitalize on defensively. The rest of it was short fields and then obviously a defensive turnover. You know, they stopped Saquon. They did a great job on Saquon. I thought they would, and I thought that would be one of the keys, the reason why Kansas City won. But the Chiefs' offense was just so disastrous that it didn't matter. I mean, the Cooper DeJean had more return yards in the first half than Kansas City did offensive passing yards. So, not really much more you can say about that. Mahomes, it was probably the worst game I've ever seen him play, and his offensive line didn't help him much, but he a lot of it's on him as well. So yeah, it was a tough pill to swallow, And the good news is I've gotten to watch that team win two Super Bowls over the last 3 years. So there's been more pain. There've been a lot more painful moments as a Chiefs fan than on Sunday, but that one definitely not one of my favorites either.
And it's going to be tough to come back from that. I mean, in the second half, that's kind of all you can think about. The season's over. And I mean, we're looking ahead to next year. It might be 6 months away, but it's, what we think about as NFL fans and people that love these teams. And so I'm just wondering, Brent, what do you think the Chiefs do now that they got kind of exposed in that way? They were still able to take down the AFC this year, being the one seed and winning two games when they needed to. Like what type of adjustments can you make in that scenario to be like, all right, we still have to get over the hump if a team like that can beat us that way? Is it offensive line? Is it more weapons? Just a younger offense in general, as far as maybe a better running back or Pacheco's healthy?
Yeah, so pretty much a combination of all of that. And I think people are overreacting a bunch. Yes, it was a terrible game by Mahomes and a terrible game by the offense in general. But I don't think that's indicative of who this football team is. The Chiefs play that game 100 times. Do they win more than half? I don't think so after watching it. But I don't think they're shut out at halftime the majority of the times or hardly at any time. So that was just a very bad performance. And it was weird because I thought that team was going to be ready for the moment. It's the biggest moment of their careers going for history. And maybe the moment just got to him too much. Mahomes has always started slow in Super Bowls, and that time he wasn't able to overcome it. But I think obviously the first and foremost is you have to have a left tackle. It's one of the most important positions in football. And the Chiefs were using a left guard who's an amazing guard, Joe Tooney, but they're using him as tackle. He's not a tackle. He's played guard his entire NFL career. And just since Christmas, over the last two regular season games, yeah, the week before Christmas, I guess. The last two regular season games, obviously the Chiefs didn't play anybody in week 18, and then the three playoff games. So he started five. He played his 5 games as a tackle in his NFL career. He's a left guard, and he's a great left guard. But Tooney got beat around the edge way too often, and then Caliendo, who was filling in for him at left guard, did not have a good game either. So the offensive line, you have to do something there. Obviously, you have to go back to Tooney at guard. You have to get a left tackle. That's the most important thing. And then one of the bad things though is Trey Smith, the Chiefs' right guard. He's probably going to be the highest paid guard in football next year. He's been great. He's been on a rookie contract. I don't think the Chiefs are going to be able to re-sign him. So yes, it's going to be another offensive line shakeup for Kansas City. And that happened after the Chiefs got beat in the Super Bowl against the Buccaneers because Mahomes was running for his life in that game too. The difference was Mahomes was running for his life in that game, but he played, I thought he still played pretty well against the Buccaneers. He was diving, throwing perfect passes, and guys were just dropping him. In this game, he wasn't. He was freaking out in the pocket. He was sometimes stepping up into pressure or trying to bail too quickly instead of focusing on what was going on downfield. So the offensive line did not help, but Mahomes didn't help himself there. I think it was definitely a combination. And when it comes to Mahomes, it's a bad game. You know, everyone has those bad games. It's just awful that he had probably his worst ever game in his biggest spot ever. So people, I think, are overreacting. Mahomes is still by far and away the best quarterback in football, and I'd rather have him than anybody else. So there's no problem there. And then wide receivers, Rashee Rice, obviously. Hopefully, you get him back. He was the Chiefs' best wide receiver as a rookie. Then this year, X-Man, he was the Chiefs' best wide receiver as a rookie. You got both those guys on rookie deals. It would be nice to be able to re-sign Hollywood or Hopkins as a wide receiver three going forward. We'll see if that happens. I think both of them are probably they both want to win championships, especially Hopkins being an older player, but I think they're definitely going to want to get paid and they might be able to get better market value elsewhere. So we'll see what the wide receiver group looks like. I expect it to be headlined by Rasheed and X. And from there, then it's just about the tight end position. You know, Travis Kelce, is he going to retire? Is he going to come back? I think Travis Kelce is the best tight end of all time. And he is still playing at a high level. He dominated the Texans in the first round of the playoffs. He struggled in the Super Bowl. I think against the Bills, they game planned for him and he wasn't the focal point because the Bills were weak on the outside and the Chiefs were able to capitalize with the wide receivers. I think it was a bad game for Kelce too in the Super Bowl. So I don't know. Maybe, you know, it's the most painful, worst loss of his career, possibly. Maybe he wants to come back. He's obviously diminished. He's not as good as he was a year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. But he's still this year, he was a top five tight end in the NFL, in my opinion. It's impossible to say he wasn't still one of the 10 best tight ends in the NFL this season. So we'll see what happens there. It's just, you know, it's football. There's going to be games where you don't play your best. And I don't think that means that you have to completely overhaul everything. There's going to be different things that the Chiefs are going to have to tweak. And then you just learn from it. So it's while it was a disappointing result, you know, devastating result. It doesn't mean that the Chiefs are over or anything. They still to beat the Bills in the AFC Championship. That game still happened. They still won that game. They still went 15-1 as as a team this season. So I mean, they're still going to go into next year, I think, as with a team that in the AFC everyone has to try to beat. And there's a lot of good contenders, but obviously the Eagles are the favorites, and rightfully so because they don't have any holes. Their wide receivers, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, both stepped up. You mentioned Jalen Hurts. He didn't have to have a great game, but he made some really good throws. And some of that was the Chiefs defense got burnt because they were selling out to stop the run. And they did do a good job of that, but at Bert the DBs a couple of times, and then that defense was phenomenal for Philadelphia. I think that's another thing is running back Chiefs are going to have to address. Obviously, Kareem Hunt was awesome to have him back, but he was let go by the Browns. So let's not act like, you know, he's some sort of world beater. He's no Saquon Barkley. And Pacheco, he never looked the same after his injury. Broke his leg though. So that takes a long time to come back. Hopefully, he just needs an offseason and he'll look like the Pacheco of years past. But I think that's a really deep running back draft. So would not hate to see the Chiefs take a third or fourth round running back to be able to mix in with Pacheco next year. And maybe you find a superstar in a draft class like that. So, yeah, there's a lot that the Chiefs can look to do offensively because the offense was disappointing. The defense was still a top 5 defense this season, and they didn't play their best game against the Eagles. Obviously, it looks like they played bad. They gave up 40 points, but like you mentioned, short fields, a defensive touchdown, and then towards the end, you're just pressing, trying to come up with turnovers instead of playing sound defense. So, yeah, I think the offense has to be addressed in terms of the offensive line, the run game, and some pass catchers. But you've got to get, I want to see Mahomes go back to being able to try to test defenses deep. You saw the touchdown at the very end. Obviously, Sirianni already got Gatorade bathed on him like it was over. The game was 100% over. But that was a hell of a throw and a hell of a play by X and by Mahomes. And that has to be at least a threat in the Chiefs offense. They can't turn Patrick Mahomes into just a short passer when he obviously has a cannon. But yeah, there's frustration, no doubt about it. But I think it's fair to be frustrated. But anybody that is writing the Chiefs off or saying that the dynasty is over or that, the Chiefs are going to be washed now, I think is ridiculous.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you were able to get that off your chest, B. Hess. Obviously that's a tough thing to go through. I'd say the biggest, well, maybe one of the biggest struggles that people might not be thinking about right now that the Chiefs have to go through is now a game where they got absolutely exposed on both sides of the ball has been put on tape. And that can't be said for this team for what, 3 years at least. And so maybe now a team like the Ravens, the Bills, other contenders in the AFC, where you see whenever they play the Chiefs, it's like they're frazzled. They don't know if they have what it takes to be able to win. And now that they see a team like the Eagles do it, and maybe they're like, you know what, this team clearly isn't unbeatable. The coaches can get a better look at maybe some of the things the Eagles did to be able to stifle that team. And that's kind of what make me worried as a Chiefs fan. Obviously, you still have a great quarterback, a great head coach, and this defense is not going anywhere. So you're going to be in spots like this again. Maybe it won't be the Super Bowl next year, maybe for a couple of years, but you're still going to be fighting in the playoffs. And just but having that the other teams can go off of is something that I would be, a little bit hesitant about because maybe they'll be a little bit more loose and be ready to just play their game instead of getting all tight whenever they go and play the Chiefs. That's what I'd be worried about. Also, I'd say,
I think that's a fair point. Well, I want to talk about that one because yeah, you kind of mentioned it before the season. It's like the Chiefs voodoo magic. They just somehow always find a way to win. They did it against the Ravens in week 1. They do it against the Bills in the AFC Championship. And you're right. I think that, those teams do kind of any team in the AFC, especially when it gets to the playoffs, is like, well, how do we beat these guys? It's like it's a mind game type of thing because they've seemed so unbeatable. So you're right. That should kind of make everyone be able to step back and be like, okay, look, this team is just as human as the rest of them. They got absolutely embarrassed in the biggest game of the season. But I also think that just because that somebody else did it doesn't mean that there's a blueprint out there. I mean, it's an obvious blueprint. Any team in the NFL, what team in the NFL wouldn't want to just wreck the game with your front four? Obviously, that's the most obvious blueprint in the world. Okay, let's not blitz. Let's drop 7 guys back into coverage so Mahomes doesn't have one-on-one matchups all over the field, and then those 4 just torment the quarterback. Of course, who isn't going to want to do that? So first you have to have the guys to do that, and you were right. You called it. That was the defensive line for the Eagles. They were the MVPs, that front 4. Josh Sweat was a beast. The other defensive tackle that wasn't Jalen Carter, the other young kid, he was wrecking the game. And so yeah, and the Chiefs offensive line didn't handle it and Mahomes didn't handle it. So if any team can have that blueprint where they just wreck the game, which is why it was so surprising to me because now the Texans they don't have that front 4, but they have two better edge rushers than the Eagles did on paper at least all season. They had Will Anderson on one side, and then they had the guy that was traded from the Vikings. Both of those guys were 10 plus sacks this year, and Mahomes was fine. They didn't wreck the game at all. And then for some reason, the Eagles they just did. They were dominant. So yeah, the point about making the Chiefs look human, the Chiefs aren't some team that we have to freak out about, I think is 100% valid. I think a blueprint on how to do it is, well, you have to just have a dominant defensive line because the Eagles didn't do anything fancy at all defensively. They just rushed four and they dominated the game, and they had seven guys sit back and smother the defense, and then they had opportunistic plays, getting interceptions and forcing fumbles. So I think it's one of those points I agree with. The other one I think is just all personnel based.
The Eagles definitely have the team, and that's why I figured they'd be able to get it done. You know, you don't expect Mahomes to have his worst game ever there. But if Mahomes would have played regular, it probably ends up being maybe 10 to 7 point game. But I just don't see any way the Chiefs could have won that the way that the Eagles played themselves, even if the Chiefs were playing their best. And then, yeah, just the other point you made, I think Travis Kelce at tight end, this might be a moment next year where you bring in a young tight end, kind of like you would with a young quarterback and an older veteran quarterback, and just have him kind of mentor some young guy that has, good attributes as the tight end, because we've seen how much that has helped out Kansas City having a dominant tight end like that for their offense and for Mahomes specifically. So I feel like they need to definitely focus on that in the offseason, whether that's in the draft or maybe trading for a young, really good tight end, and just have him sit behind Kelsey and learn everything he can. And then maybe not sit behind him at all times. Maybe give Kelsey some rest so that he's actually ready to go 100% whenever it comes time for the playoffs next year, rather than having to play so many snaps going into it. I feel like that might be what the Chiefs need to really get over the hump and keep the top spot in the AFC, because after this game, a lot of other teams are going to be looking at that and being like, hey, it's open for us. We can take it right now. This team's down.
And I think that the Travis Kelsey thing is a very, very interesting topic because, I mean, that's if he even comes back. I think there's still a chance that he retires. I thought that, if they won the game, I was expecting him to retire. I mentioned last week that, well, then he was saying stuff in the media, but, of course you're going to say that. You're going to say, oh, I feel good. I could play for another 3 years because never wanted that to be a storyline going into this game is that, oh, could this be Kelsey's last game? Now that it's happened, I think it's obvious that he was definitely considering it, or he's definitely considering it now. And I wouldn't be mad if the Chiefs are like, look, Travis, just be ready to go by November. Like for real. Like we'll just just be ready to come, just come back at the end of the season. Or like you said, just he doesn't even, yeah, play like he's on playing 1/3 of the snaps during the regular season. Whatever it is would be fine because he still is that guy in terms of a leader on the team and still a plus in the on the team. I don't think now he shouldn't be the number one target anymore. I thought that basically even the whole postseason, I was still expecting him to, have more yards, more touchdowns than anybody else. That clearly was Xavier Worthy. And I don't even know if Rashee Rice is on, if it's Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy healthy and at the full peak of their powers next postseason. I don't even know which one of those I would think would be the wide receiver one for Kansas City next year. But I know that both of them should be more productive than Travis Kelce at 35, 36 years old. But I still think that he could provide a huge asset. So yeah, I think it, and obviously, when you're dating Taylor Swift and you've got one of the most popular podcasts in the world, it's no Hesse Bros, but it's New Heights. It's pretty good. Like, yeah, there's a whole host of reasons why he could step away from the game. I think the biggest one is though he doesn't want to leave on this kind of note where he's kind of was had a chance to maybe have like that crowning defining moment of his career, which he's already had tons. He's already in that game. He broke Jerry Rice's record for most catches ever in the Super Bowl, most career Super Bowl catches. He's got so many records. He's got three Super Bowls as it is, so it's not like he needs any more for his legacy. He's already going to go down as the best tight end or the second best tight end, depending on what you want to say, and a Hall of Famer. So it's not like he needs any more. But if he wants to, I think there's an avenue there where he can come back in sort of a different type of role than what would be traditionally thought of. And yeah, obviously there's other guys that are going to need to step up. Noah Gray, I think he can be a viable guy. And there's another guy they drafted this past year, Jared Wiley, third round pick. and he was on IR midway through the season. But I think he's a guy that definitely could be into that role for the next Chiefs tight end. Obviously, you're not nobody's going to fill Travis Kelce's shoes. You know, it's not like anybody in New England's they're like, oh, Gronk's gone, let's just make a new Gronk. You know, that just doesn't happen. So obviously, it's there's never going to be another Travis Kelce. But yeah, somebody has to get some of that production. So that's definitely a big storyline because well, I don't know. This Travis Kelce, he could announce tomorrow that he's retiring, or it could drag on through August where we're like we don't know even to then.
Yeah, you never know. He could pull an Andrew Luck and do it right before the season starts. Anything's possible. He could do it at halftime of the first game next year.
That I know that he won't do.
You never know. You never know. It's the NFL. Yeah. Hey, who knows what's going on? That's why we're over here talking about random stuff.
Hmm.
Hey, you don't know, but it's fun to think about. And Brent, I'm glad you're taking the loss well. Obviously, it would have been amazing for your team to get the three-peat for you, but you're still there. And hey, you've had all these great time with the Chiefs getting the Super Bowls. I don't think you're too mad at those Super Bowl rings you got over there.
No, a lot of pride still in Kansas City. You know, Super Bowl champions. It's weird though. It's the first time in over 2 years now that like the Chiefs haven't been the best team in the NFL. I know a lot of goofy people on TV, and you know when you rank a 12 pack, sometimes we'll say teams outside Kansas City are the best in the NFL. But for the last 2 years, I just laughed at those people. Thought they were just clowns, buffoons, fools. But now it's like, yeah, the Chiefs are not the best team in the NFL right now. It's a weird feeling, but they're still right there. It's going to be fun. You know, obviously it sucks right now. I don't even want to really think about having to wait for an off season, having to try to climb that mountain because it is a hard mountain to climb back up. You know, you never know what could happen in the future. Just getting to a Super Bowl is so hard, much less trying to win it once you get there. But you right now it's more of just appreciating the last 3 years because no team's ever gotten that close to a three-peat. There have been a handful of teams that have won back to back, and none of them even made it to a Super Bowl for a chance at that third one. So this team they did a lot of special things. Just they did not bring it in the last game. And even if they did, like you said, I don't know if they would have been enough for the Eagles because Philadelphia played outstanding and they deserved to win that Super Bowl. It was just not the Sunday I was hoping for.
Yeah. Well, BS, I just want to let you know too. Oh, you're crazy for putting the Lions over the Chiefs. Well, whenever the Lions beat the Eagles week one next year in Lincoln Financial Field, I'll be telling you the best team in the league is, and it's going to be the Detroit Lions. So I'm already looking forward to that game. It might not be technically scheduled yet, but we can all see it in the works. Next NFL game, Lions at Eagles. That's going to be an absolute throwdown. And Lions are coming out on top. I can already tell you that. We're ready to put in the work, just like I did at Culver's today. Brad Holmes is going to be cooking up like the chefs in the back, and we're going to be absolutely ready to go for this one. I can't wait for next NFL season. Even though 2025 is in the books, we're all looking forward to San Francisco a year from now.
That's right. Hey, well, once anybody dethrones the champs, then it's fair game, 100%. So yeah, and the Lions, they've got a great team. Hopefully they get that defense healthy and there'll be a threat. And I do think your point about the Lions being so good this year kind of underrated the Eagles because the Lions were always the one seed in the NFC the whole way. And Philadelphia, they didn't lose very much this year. They had what one bad loss to Tampa Bay whenever they didn't have AJ Brown, and then they lose to Washington without Jalen Hurts. He gets hurt in that game. They have one other loss. I can't remember exactly what it was.
Early in the year too, they started off 2-2, and they won the 16 of their
Oh, they
next
lost the
17.
Falcons because Saquon dropped the pass on third down. Looked like they were going to win that game. So yeah, I mean, absolutely. The Eagles were a great team all year, and they proved it in the Super Bowl. So they deserve all the credit, and it's going to be fun to see what teams are the contenders. Obviously, I think those five are going to be the ones right up there: Philadelphia and Detroit in the NFC, and then you've got Kansas City, Buffalo, and Baltimore in the AFC. Hopefully. We get to see our boy Jaden Daniels. Maybe he gets some more pieces defensively to help with Washington. Those guys don't fumble on him, and they're a threat. It's crazy because I think if the Rams, if that game doesn't start snowing in the second half of the divisional, I think the Rams might beat Philadelphia in that one. And then who knows what we're talking about, but that's the way football goes. Usually a game of inches. It usually comes down to a play here and play there, and that's what was so shocking is the Super Bowl didn't come down to. There's no one play, there's no one thing I can be like, well, if this didn't happen, maybe it goes differently. Obviously, there's a few plays where I think that the outcome, the score at least is very different. It's hard to say that the Chiefs win on any one or different play. The DeJean touchdown, massive. The other interception by Bond, massive. And then the DeAndre Hopkins drop. Those are probably the three biggest plays. That's just like, that you kind of want those back. But there was one team that was clearly the better one on the day. And so that's all you can do.
That's how it goes down. 2025 or 2024 season in the books, and Hesse Bros was there the whole way, making our picks, doing our thing. It was a great year, B Hess, and I hope y'all are ready. I'm sure we'll have a few episodes in the off season, and we're going to be getting ready for next year as well. Staying up to date on all the news. Free agency is always going to be crazy, and same with the draft too. So we'll see how all these teams end up shaking out whenever it comes time next year.
Yeah, it'll be time to crack another 12 pack when we get back to draft time. We'll have a look ahead for 12 pack and a look at the NFL draft, so that'll be exciting. I want to thank everybody for watching Hesse Bros all season long. Chiefs and Lions, the one seeds could not get it done this year, but hopefully they can be back there kicking their feet up for another bye next year, and maybe we'll get that Super Bowl we're all hoping for, Luke.
I have a good feeling. I'm already got my calendar marked for the parade next year, so we'll be ready to go.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for watching Hesse Bros. I've luckily dried my tears from the Chiefs' loss this week, and always great talking football with my brother. So appreciate you guys for watching and liking and commenting. Keep doing that, and we are very excited for another season when it comes in September.